Imagine the Alaska Highway, a lifeline through wild country, connecting the U.S. to Alaska for over 80 years. Today, August 16, 2025, that connection is severed. Canada has blocked American access to Alaska. This isn't a minor dispute. It's a crisis shaking the foundation of U.S.-Canada relations. The world is watching as a simmering conflict explodes, threatening decades of partnership. With former President Trump fanning the flames, the situation is volatile and unpredictable. How did we get here? What does this mean for both nations? We'll explore the history, the events that led to this blockade, and what's at stake for everyone on both sides of the border. The road to Alaska is closed, but the story is just beginning. To truly understand the crisis facing us today, we have to look back, way back, to the very beginnings of the Alaska Highway. This isn't just a story about a road, it's about the people, the politics, and the promises that shaped an entire region. The Alaska Highway's origins are rooted in urgency and cooperation. In the early 1940s, the world was at war, and the United States feared for Alaska's safety after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The only way to defend the territory was to build a land route, fast. Built during the height of World War II, the highway was a monumental joint effort between the United States and Canada. It was a race against time, with both nations pooling resources, manpower, and expertise to secure Alaska and the North American continent. Over 10,000 U.S. soldiers and thousands of Canadian civilians and military personnel worked side by side. In just 8 months, they carved a 700-mile lifeline through some of the most unforgiving wilderness on the continent, facing biting cold, dense forests, and treacherous terrain. After the war, the Alaska Highway transformed from a military necessity into Alaska's economic artery. It delivered vital goods, connected isolated families, and opened up the region to tourism and new opportunities. The road became a symbol of hope and progress for generations of Alaskans. But the highway is more than just a strip of asphalt. It stands as a powerful symbol of trust, partnership, and the enduring cooperation between two neighboring countries. The United States built the highway on Canadian soil, but only with Canada's full support. Decades-long agreements were signed, ensuring that this international corridor would remain open and accessible, a testament to mutual respect and shared purpose. Now, that trust has been shaken. The closure of the highway has left communities cut off and travelers stranded, raising questions about the future of this vital link. For many Americans, Canada's decision to close the highway feels like a deep betrayal, a break from the spirit of cooperation that built the road in the first place. It's not just an inconvenience, it's a wound to a shared legacy. The stakes are incredibly high. This road isn't just a route on a map, it's woven into the very identity, economy, and survival of Alaska. For many, it's a lifeline that cannot be replaced. The current crisis is about far more than logistics or transportation. It's about broken promises, lost trust, and the uncertain future of a road that has always meant so much more than just miles of pavement. This crisis is the result of months of escalating tension. It began with a U.S. tariff on Canadian softwood lumber, which hit Canadian communities hard. Canada responded with strict new environmental rules and tolls for vehicles crossing the Yukon, targeting U.S. truckers. The U.S. refused to comply, calling the rules discriminatory. On August 15th, Canada closed the border to non-essential U.S. traffic to Alaska. Prime Minister Trudeau defended the move as protecting Canadian sovereignty and the Arctic environment. The U.S. called it an illegal blockade. What started as a trade and environmental dispute has become a full-blown sovereignty crisis. The stage is set for confrontation. The blockade sent shockwaves through Washington and straight to Mar-a-Lago. Former President Trump erupted on social media, blaming weak leadership and demanding harsh retaliation. He called for 100% tariffs on Canadian goods and accused Canada of holding Alaska hostage. The White House, meanwhile, condemned Canada's action but urged restraint, recalling the U.S. ambassador for urgent talks. Inside the administration, there's a split. Trump's camp wants economic war, while diplomats warn of spiraling damage. The crisis has become a political flashpoint, with Alaska's fate hanging in the balance. The pressure is on for a decisive response. The economic fallout was immediate. Alaska's supermarkets face shortages. Prices are rising as air and sea freight struggle to keep up. Construction projects are halted, tourism is in chaos, and trucking companies on both sides of the border are idled. Small Canadian towns along the highway are losing their summer lifeblood, American travelers. "Our season is finished," says a motel owner in Whitehorse. The blockade exposes the fragility of cross-border supply chains. Billions in trade are at risk, and ordinary people, businesses, workers, families, are paying the price. The longer the standoff, the deeper the damage. This is a crisis with real, everyday consequences. For Alaskans, the blockade is deeply personal, cutting them off not just from the rest of the U.S., but from their loved ones, essential medical care, and even basic supplies. Many Alaskans rely on the road through Canada for everything from groceries to hospital visits, and now that lifeline is suddenly gone. The sense of isolation is overwhelming, as families are forced to communicate only through screens, unable to visit in person or support each other in times of need. Students who had plans to attend college in the lower 48 are now stuck at home, their dreams put on hold. Military families in the middle of relocating to new bases find themselves stranded, their lives packed in boxes but unable to move forward. For those requiring specialized medical treatment only available in the continental U.S., the situation is even more dire. Appointments are missed, treatments delayed, and uncertainty grows with each passing day. On the Canadian side, the impact is just as profound. Border towns that once thrived on cross-border traffic now feel eerily quiet. Small businesses that depended on American customers are struggling to survive, and the sense of community that once spanned the border is fading. Friendships and business ties that took years to build are suddenly severed. Families who used to visit each other every weekend are now separated by miles of closed roads and uncertainty. "It feels wrong," says a Canadian border guard, his voice heavy with emotion. "We're used to waving them through, sharing stories, and being part of each other's lives. Now, we're forced to turn them away." The crisis is fraying the social fabric of northern communities, turning once close neighbors into distant strangers. Community gatherings are canceled, and the warmth that defined these towns is replaced by a sense of loss and suspicion. Alaskans feel abandoned by their own country, left to fend for themselves. Meanwhile, many Canadians are conflicted, torn between supporting their government's tough stance and empathizing with their American neighbors. Protests and heated debates are becoming more common as people struggle to make sense of the new reality. The blockade isn't just closing a road, it's closing doors between people, families, and entire communities. Highways that once symbolized connection now stand as barriers, lined with barricades and warning signs. Anxiety and resentment are growing on both sides of the border. Community meetings are tense, with residents voicing fears about the future and frustration over decisions made far away in government offices. Ordinary citizens who had no say in the political decisions that led to this crisis are now caught in a storm of uncertainty. They wait at border crossings, hoping for change, but are met with only more questions and few answers. The human cost is mounting with each passing day. Emotional scenes play out at border crossings as families wave to each other from a distance, unable to embrace. The pain and concern etched on their faces is a stark reminder that behind every policy, there are real people paying the price. As the crisis unfolds, leading experts and political analysts are weighing in, offering a range of perspectives on Canada's bold and unexpected move. Many see this as a high-stakes gamble, a risky play for leverage that could have far-reaching consequences for both countries. Dr. Eleanor Vance of the Council on Foreign Relations explains that Canada, recognizing it cannot match the sheer economic and military power of the United States, has chosen to target a specific American vulnerability: the Alaska Highway. This vital route is a lifeline for Alaska, connecting it to the rest of the U.S., and any disruption here sends shockwaves through American logistics and security planning. This approach marks a sharp break from Canada's traditional style of quiet, behind-the-scenes diplomacy. Historically, Canada has preferred to resolve disputes through negotiation and consensus, rarely resorting to such direct and public pressure tactics. Former U.S. diplomats are sounding the alarm, warning that this crisis is eroding decades of trust between the two nations. They caution that if the rift deepens, future American leaders may look for ways to bypass Canada entirely, seeking alternative routes and partnerships that could permanently alter the relationship. The stakes are even higher in the Arctic, where U.S.-Canada cooperation has been crucial in countering the growing influence of rivals like Russia and China. The current crisis threatens to undermine this partnership, potentially opening the door for these powers to expand their presence and influence in the region. Some analysts believe that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's bold gamble, could force a quick U.S. concession, arguing that the United States cannot afford prolonged instability along such a critical corridor. They see this as a calculated risk that could pay off if Washington blinks first. However, others warn that the long-term damage to the relationship may far outweigh any short-term gains. They point to the potential for lasting resentment, economic fallout, and a breakdown in the close cooperation that has defined U.S.-Canada relations for generations. The consensus among experts is clear. This moment represents a true turning point. The decisions made now will shape the future of North American relations for years, if not decades, to come. The U.S.-Canada relationship is entering uncharted and potentially dangerous territory. The sense of uncertainty is palpable, with both sides weighing their next moves carefully. Around the world, governments and observers are watching closely to see how these two long-standing allies handle a crisis that could reshape not just their own destinies, but the entire continent's balance of power. The stakes extend far beyond a single highway or a single dispute. The outcome will impact trade, security, and the daily lives of millions who depend on the seamless flow of goods and people across the border. Ultimately, this crisis is about more than just infrastructure or politics. It's about the future of North American unity, cooperation, and the shared values that have long bound these nations together. What happens next? Both sides have options, but none are easy. Diplomacy is the best hope, a temporary deal on environmental rules in exchange for reopening the highway. If talks fail, the U.S. could impose tariffs or slow Canadian trade at other border crossings, risking a trade war. Long-term, America may invest in bypassing Canada, expanding Alaska's ports and air links. The military is preparing for emergency airlifts if needed. Canada's strategy is to hold firm, betting U.S. businesses will pressure Washington to compromise. But with every day, the risk of escalation grows. The next moves will decide if this is a short crisis or the start of a long, cold standoff. The Alaska Highway's closure is a wake-up call for both nations. Escalation only brings mutual harm, hurting families, businesses, and communities on both sides. The highway was built in a spirit of partnership. That spirit is needed now more than ever. Leaders must look past politics and find common ground. Citizens, too, have a role: demand diplomacy, seek understanding, and resist the pull of outrage. The U.S.-Canada relationship has survived disagreements before by choosing cooperation over conflict. The coming days will test that legacy. Will this be a brief crisis or a turning point in North American history? Stay informed, join the conversation, and remember, the future of the last frontier and the continent depends on what happens next. How should this crisis be resolved? Share your thoughts below.